World Insight coming to you live from CTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, the Filipino president is meeting with Japanese leaders just after a high-profile visit to China and public spats with the U.S. Is Duterte's strategy of an independent path among global powers realistic? And Facebook, Twitter, PayPal were among top U.S. websites recently taken down by a cyber attack. Experts call smart devices too dumb to fend off hackers. So is the Internet of Things weakening cyber security? And we start today's show in Tokyo, where Philippine President Duterte is on a 3-day visit to Japan. He talked with Prime Minister Abe earlier today about economic cooperation and regional security. After Duterte's hostile outburst against the U.S., could Japan help improve Manila's alliance with Washington? And how would the Philippines' independent foreign policy impact the region? Take a look.
President Duterte has arrived in Tokyo for a 3-day visit, his first as leader of the Philippines.
The Philippines will continue to work closely with Japan on issues of common concern in the region.
Visit comes amid jitters about his foreign policy goals after continuous verbal attacks on the Philippines' traditional ally, the United States. Though he has harsh words for Washington, Duterte is gentler towards Tokyo. Stepping up bilateral economic cooperation agrees with his previous statement that the Philippines is open for business with the big investor. Likewise, Duterte's visit to China last week saw the signing of 13 deals expected to be worth $24 billion. Though Manila's overtures towards Beijing are triggering lots of worries globally, China says it supports the Philippines' plan to repair relations with Japan and the US.
We hope all countries, especially our neighbors, can build healthy and cooperative relations with each other. Such relations are conducive to regional peace and stability, especially when tensions in this area are mitigated.
Manila has made its new foreign policy quite clear.
I have declared that I will pursue an independent foreign policy. I want, maybe in the next 2 years, my country freed of the presence of foreign military troops.
President Duterte's visits to China and Japan demonstrate his quest for a balanced role among all powers in the Asia-Pacific region.
And for more discussion about that topic, I'm joined here in the Beijing studio, Mr. Yang Xiyu, Senior Research Fellow from the China Institute of International Studies. In Washington, D.C. in the U.S., we're having Ms. Shihoko Goto, Senior Associate for Northeast Asia at the Woodrow Wilson Center for International Scholars. Welcome to both of you. I want to start with the question, how should we understand that some of the latest remarks made by President Duterte from the Philippines about his relations with the United States? Let me go to you, Ms. Goto, since you're coming from the U.S. for the moment. First of all, he said, 2 years, any foreign troops out of the Philippines.
First of all, let's take a step back. President Duterte has been in power since June. This is really his first foray into the diplomatic arena. As we heard in the beginning, he was in China earlier, now he's in Tokyo. There has been a lot of frustration in the Philippine military-based presence, and there has been frustration too about the unease of U.S. commitment to the region. Now, he has backtracked somewhat from his statements that he made in Beijing about U.S. engagement, but he has made clear that he would like to have U.S. military presence abate within the next 24 months. It is a popular move, but within the Philippines. But as the United States itself welcomes a new administration, I think there will be opportunity not only for the new leader of the Philippines, but also the incoming new leader of the United States to work more closely together.
Very interesting. Mr. Yang, from China's perspective, does China want to see United States and the Philippines not necessarily going to work together anymore? After all, the Obama administration regarding the military agreement signed with the Philippines as the pillar of the pivot or the rebalance.
Yeah. From China's point of view, China always highly value the principle of independence. So regarding to Duterte's quite several fundamental adjustments in relation with the U.S., not only the military presence you mentioned, but also the others. We think Duterte, all the efforts he has made are designed to more independence rather than the breakup with the United States. In other words, that's not an anti-American policy process. It's a sort of readjusting Filipinos' foreign policy structure among the powers like China, Japan, U.S., and Russia.
We'll go to some of the other parts later in our discussion. And now, let's talk on the phone with Clarita Carlos, who is a professor of political science at the University of the Philippines. Of course, we do not have much time for the phoner, but still I want to talk to you, Professor. Briefly, if you can, do you think President Duterte will be able to break the mold, as they say, of the international relations policy regarding the Philippines?
Well, it seems like he wants to do that, attempting to do that, but what he had established thus far in all these confusing statements is that first he would like to have new directions in Philippine foreign relations, and that means we might even have to examine the Mutual Defense Treaty, which we signed with the United States of America. And the same with Japan, but we here in the Philippines, despite all the confusion that his mixed declarations have engendered, really are looking at whether he is indeed going to be able to find markets for our products, for our services, and that's the only concern that we have. We really don't care which country will be able to do that.
Will he be able to have the power to do that? Professor, one of the things is, of course, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. That is a specific agreement signed by your previous president of the Philippines. And this president, President Duterte, certainly has the executive power to scrap it off. Will he scrap it off because he's proposing 2 years, all foreign troops out of the Philippines?
Well, for one, remember the Visiting Forces Agreement, which is a protocol to the Mutual Defense Treaty, was treated as a treaty by the Senate, and therefore it was ratified. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement was just declared constitutional by the Supreme Court very recently. So Duterte, even if he's the chief articulator of our foreign policy, has to deal with these other branches of government. He alone cannot make a turnaround and just put a stop and change our relationship with the United States of America.
Professor Clarita Carlos, coming from the University of Philippines, thank you so much for talking to us, ma'am. Really appreciate it. Let's come back for our discussion. Ms. Cotto, we understand there were statements made by the Filipino president. For example, let the U.S. contingents out of Mindanao, and also he has been talking about separate from the United States, even though we do not know specific meanings of what exactly the separation means. But he has also the executive power to do many of the things he suggested. Of course, more support coming from the whole political machine will be helpful only to him. Having said that, though, which stage do you think he's at in changing what he perceives as the overall structure of the Filipino foreign policy? How much he should be trusted from your perspective?
Changing that question slightly, I believe the real question is, what is his end goal? What does he hope to achieve here?
All right.
He is a democratically elected president, so he wants to continue to remain in power, and that requires voter support. What he has been saying has, even though it's incredibly controversial and very worrisome in many diplomatic circles, has been by and large supported by the Filipino voters. His other goal from a global perspective is for the Philippines to play a key role in ensuring stability in the region. And I believe that if you actually look at some of his rhetoric and you parse it down, he is committed to democratic values, to adhering to the rule of law, and to also to ensure that the settlement of disputes continues.
All right.
And I think in order to achieve these goals, he's actually looking to explore what kind of options there are, what kind of partnerships he can have with this. And I think, just one point, his visit to Japan has highlighted how Japan actually might be able to play a key role in bridging U.S., the United States on the one hand, and the Philippines on the other, to achieve these common objectives.
Of course, we're talking about several countries at this moment. It's not just the U.S., but also Japan, the country that he latest visited, and also China. He earlier, before Japan, visited as the president for the state visit. Mr. Yang, he said many things during his trip to China, but now when he's in the Philippines, he said one thing, that is about trade and economics with China.
Yeah.
And he also said that he also was being suggested by the Chinese President Xi Jinping that China and the Philippines are brothers. So how should we understand this evolving relationship? Where does China think the Philippines is in terms of China's overall map of Asia Pacific region, given it is a moving factor now with this president?
Well, firstly, in the economic area, that is most important issue for Duterte in Duterte's agenda. Japan enjoy closer ties with the Philippines than China. Japan, number one, is the largest provider of FDI to Philippines, and secondly, largest buyers for Philippines exports, larger than China. So economically, they are closer than China and the Philippines. And secondly, I believe, as I mentioned, Duterte is trying to readjust the structure of the power relationship, and have witnessed the sharp and even very rapid readjustment of Philippine-US relation, so that many observers say, oh, anti-American trend. I'm not saying anti-American, but really get distance away from the United States. But meanwhile, by this visit, he is trying to make a closer ties with Japan.
Right.
It's a sort of rebalance.
Well, whether it is distancing away itself from the U.S. is still uncertain, because we see rhetorics, but we do not necessarily have seen actions and legal orders or executive orders coming from him. That's why I go to you, Ms. Goto. Several things. First of all, Daniel Russell, your Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia, visited the Philippines over the weekend on remarks regarding President Duterte made recently about U.S.-China relations, U.S.-Philippine relations. He actually got confirmation from his Filipino counterpart, the Foreign Secretary, and also the presidential spokesperson, that all agreements will be honored. In other words, nothing have changed. But then, on the other hand, you have seen the calls coming from President Duterte. So how does the U.S. reconcile these different kinds of gestures, not just coming from President Duterte himself, but also from his cabinet, just within a few days itself? What do you make of it? And does it really say President Duterte is moving distant away from the U.S.? Or not at all at this stage? That we're only guessing from the rhetorics.
I think what we can see is that despite the rhetoric, there has actually been no change in the actual implementation of policy. Now the question is, will there be change? Bearing in mind that the Philippines is a democracy, and it is not simply up to the executive power, but it is also up to the elected members of Parliament also to actually have a voice in this. Whether his propositions can actually move forward or not ultimately remains in the hands of the legislators who are in turn voted in by the electorate. So we don't know what's going to happen, but let's look at the United States. The United States too has had some very interesting rhetoric going on in this very exciting presidential election cycle. One candidate, the Republican nominee Donald Trump, has said that the U.S. alliance at the moment is unfair towards the United States, and so Washington should really look at reassessing its position and rebalance the alliance. But that has not actually led to any action. Of course, he is a candidate, and polls suggest that he will actually not win. And if it is Hillary Clinton who does actually win, then it is unlikely that there would be any significant change in the alliance. But my point being that there are always checks and balances in any democratically elected government, including the Philippines. So simply taking Duterte's words at face value really doesn't let us move forward in the conversation. But
well, thank you very much.
One final point.
Final point. I'll let you go. Final point. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is a time for the United States to have some introspection about its own policies as well, that it cannot take alliances that it has had for decades for granted.
All right.
That it too needs to be very careful about its words.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shihoki Goto from the United States. I understand you have to leave of our discussion for now. Really appreciate your efforts. Thank you. And now let's have on the phone Professor Takasato Watanabe, Professor Emeritus from Doshisha University in Japan. Professor Watanabe, great to have you. Very quick question for you. This specific visit, both sides, Japan and the Philippines, put out some words in their joint statement. From the Japanese side, it said two things. One is to support the peaceful settlement of the territorial disputes. Of course, that was regarding, some would say, the South China Sea. And secondly, Japan is willing to provide more weapons for the Philippines. What kind of role is Japan trying to play vis-a-vis its relation with the Philippines, do you think, Professor? And also carving out its own role in the region, Professor?
Yes, Japan is not is a partner of the United States, but actually in reality the follower of the United States. So when the President Duterte said he is, or his country is leaving United States, then you see Abe decided to help the United States, and Duterte's idea and Abe's idea came to be to the same point, because Duterte needs domestic stability by the money of the foreign countries. In that sense, they need for that stability China and Japan, because both China and Japan have a certain amount of the money and high advanced technologies, and also international balance of power. So Duterte is so clever that he went to China, and it is good. And then he came to Japan and said that we don't abandon Japan as we did for United States. This is very clever.
Okay.
However, that kind of the power structure is very, very important to analyze this kind of situation.
Professor Watanabe, the Filipino President Duterte, he said one thing during his visit to Japan. He said this: the Philippines' special friend, he's regarding Japan as, who is closer than a brother. As we understand earlier, China and the Philippines, when the two presidents met, they were talking about each other's relationship as brothers. Of course, we cannot just take words with its superficial meanings, but still people would have some correlations when they compare these two statements.
Yes. Today, you see, all the newspapers of Japan are talking about his visit to Japan, a meeting with the Prime Minister Abe on the first page. And as you have said, you see, he is just reading the people's mind of the Philippines domestically. This is the most important because in the society of the Philippines, there are so many, you see, drug addicts,
Right.
like you had in China by the United Kingdom, like opium wars. So this is very important to make the society stable. Key needs the better peaceful relations with China and Japan through the international meetings like this.
Okay, Professor Watanabe from Doshisha University, thank you so much, sir, for being with us on the phone. Come back to you, Mr. Yang. With Japan plus China, Japan maybe providing weapons, maybe providing more support politically to the Philippines. China, of course, more closer trade tie and economic ties with the Philippines, be able to make up for the loss, as President Duterte was interpreting earlier to the audience that he was speaking to, of a relationship between the U.S. and the Philippines getting distant away?
Well, I think Duterte put top priority at the economy, so that's quite certain he will make harder and harder efforts to improve both relations with both with China and Japan. Actually, he has also high expectation economically to Japan. So obviously they will continue their efforts.
Infrastructure, for example.
Including varied form of loans from the Japan and also from China. Economic, that is the base and top priority. And meanwhile, as I mentioned, he want to make a rebalance of his relations, the Philippines' relations with the Western countries. Let's say Japan is Western bloc. So when he make a distance away from the U.S., they are getting closer ties with Japan. So that in general they remain keeping good relationship with this bloc. Meanwhile,
if that were the case, what would that mean for China?
Well,
as China and Japan have history problems, territorial disputes, issues, and also different roles in the Asia-Pacific region. Well, at the same time, of course, two countries are also willing to work for a brighter path.
Yeah,
what would that mean?
Well, that's a great test for China's strategic wisdom, but also for test for the other players, because we are in as a game changer, Duterte put all powers in a big chess, in a multiple chess. Each player need to be careful and try to be more smart, or they will lose. So facing the opportunities and challenges, you cannot simply say, oh, challenge is bigger than opportunity, or vice versa. It's up to your wisdom.
All right, it's a big chess, certainly.
Yep.
President Duterte has put everybody on that board already.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yang Xiyu from China Institute of International Studies with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come. The vulnerability of smart devices was recently highlighted when hackers used them to disable major U.S. websites like Twitter and PayPal. How should cybersecurity tighten up for the Internet of Things? Several of the world's best-known websites were inaccessible across parts of the United States on Friday after hackers targeted a company that acts as a switchboard for the Internet. Experts say this was a new type of attack. So what type exactly is it? And how serious can the results be? We go to our discussion shortly, but first, bring you this background story.
After 11 hours, service was finally restored. This massive cyber attack left millions of internet users unable to access over 1,000 websites. Giants like Twitter, CNN and PayPal were on the list of targets.
U.S. government agency is monitoring the situation, and they'll take a close look at it. But at this point, I don't have any information to share about who may be responsible for that malicious activity.
The incident involved a distributed denial of service or DDoS attack using Internet of Things devices. Major internet infrastructure provider DIN was swamped by data requests from a network of hijacked machines. In this case, hundreds of thousands of hacked smart devices.
What's really unique in this situation is that the attackers are actually leveraging vulnerable devices that people are putting all over their homes, all over the world, to launch these distributed attacks.
Chinese electronics firm Xiongmai recalled some products after the hack, saying basic security errors such as consumers' inability to set passwords on many connections was one system weakness exploited in the attack.
We've actually seen an increase of over 125% denial of service attacks year over year, and we're going to continue to see this increase over time, and I think that it's not really going to stop anytime soon.
The US government is developing a new set of strategic principles for securing internet-connected devices. Friday's attack represents a new phase in information-age digital warfare, a danger likely to increase as both nation-states and criminal hacker groups step up attacks through the Internet of Things.
To discuss more about that incident and what might be the impact of it and what's behind it, I'm joined here in the Beijing studio by Lu Chuanying, who is a research fellow at the Shanghai Institute for International Studies. Welcome, sir, to our program. In Washington, D.C., we're having Dr. Ernest McDuffie, who is a computer scientist and also founder of Global McDuffie Group. Welcome. In Boston, we are joined by Mr. Robert Siciliano, who is a security expert with Hotspot Shield. Welcome to the three of you, gentlemen. Mr. Siciliano, may I have your comment first? What do you think? What type of attack exactly was it?
It seems that hacktivists, or at least hacking enthusiasts, have been working on DDoS attacks for quite some time, and they have created a malware, malicious software, that allows them to exploit IP addresses of millions of internet-connected devices. And this was the launch of an attack, of a test, to see just how successful they could be. And they proved that, obviously, going forward, that they could pull this off now and probably again in the future.
Mr. McDuffie, how come we're so vulnerable, especially when it comes to the internet and the smart devices?
Well, that's a complex question. Certainly it goes back to the fact that software development traditionally doesn't focus on security issues. The manufacturers of devices want to get features out the door as quickly as possible, and security considerations are often the last thing to be considered in that process. So you end up with lots and lots of devices with lots of vulnerabilities.
Is there a way to cure it? Mr. Lu?
Yeah, because the Internet of Things is new technology development, so people are not pay too much attention to their security issue so far. So in the future, I think there are a lot of things we can do, especially from the government levels. Government can require the company to raise their security and the standard level and help the users, let them know how to protect their devices. And also from the industrial levels, there are a lot of things we can do.
Well, we understand the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Mr. McDuffie, have consulted 18 of those companies, the service providers, and come up with a whole set of rules that companies should follow, likely to be publicized in the next few weeks. But the question is, if it's only followed by the United States, as we all understand, the world of the internet is certainly a global one, not just within one's national border, is it really going to solve the problem?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a global problem. It's a step in the right direction, but you really need to look at the global supply chain for software development and devices, and have systems and regulations that have international reach. Bilateral agreements between countries like China and the United States would be a great first step because of the size of economies to start putting those kind of rules in place.
But this is a complicated thing, isn't it, Mr. Siciliano? Because recently, just one example, a Chinese company in Hangzhou tried to recall some of their products. One is webcam, the other is some devices put out by that company. They thought they were exploited by the hackers, whether for this case or some of the other cases. So even one little weak disconnect within the whole system would provide the hackers in a global chain with the opportunity to attack in such a massive scale. This is only China's, small company in China, their product. We could talk about another product coming from the United States or from the UK or anywhere in the world. So, Mr. Siciliano, is there a way really to protect from now on?
Well, it is, as stated by previous presenters, the development of hardware and software needs to follow an application security process, seeking out those vulnerabilities in that hardware, software, and firmware before its launch and release. That way, prior to that release, they have tightened up or firmed up any potential vulnerabilities, preventing hacks like this from being perpetrated. But it requires a coordinated effort, and sometimes, unfortunately, due to the sophistication of the ne'er-do-wells, the criminal hackers, consistently finding those flaws and vulnerabilities, it does take bilateral agreements and the foresight to seek out how such flaws or vulnerabilities could be used for ill-gotten purposes.
But Mr. Liu, help me to understand this. I'm an outsider, but I certainly, with simple logic, trying to figure out what's really happening. Even if you have bilateral agreement, like Mr. Siciliano earlier suggested, or you have increased the levels of security across the board, at least as much as possible, as Mr. McDuffie earlier mentioned, you still could have all of these weak links in the overall global manufacturer chain.
Yeah.
And any of those little things could be taken advantage by either hackers or whoever, the special interest groups. So once again, is there a way to really secure?
Well, you need to think that cybersecurity is kind of a dynamic issue. You cannot have once for all resolutions. So you need to, share.
Always adjust. Always adjust, as you say.
This attack demonstrates two important things. One is the Internet of Things, because so many devices, as you mentioned, could be our source of attacker. And another one is attack to the critical Internet structure, infrastructure. This is something really new. DDoS attack is something always happened, but use Internet of Things to attack critical infrastructure is the first time.
But that possibility have always been there. The question is, why haven't, from company, the business community, to the government, have been addressing those problems? Mr. McDuffie, I have to come back to you because you served both sides, both in the government earlier and now in the business community. Have both parties purposefully, in a way, ignored this issue? Because the consumers have always been on the weaker side. They cannot do anything unless the government and the business community work together. But the previous two parties, for their own advantages, I wouldn't name them, but try to ignore the security issues.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that the government or industry is ignoring the issues. The issues have been around for a while, and they're pretty complex. My last job in government was the lead of a thing called the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, which focused on public-private partnerships between industry, government, and academia, and outreach to the general public, making the public aware that you talk about the weakest links always going to be there. Well, the weakest link in any cybersecurity system is the human element. And the everyday user not being concerned with updating their passwords or keeping the latest antivirus, anti-malware software active on their system is what allows these botnets, millions, literally tens of millions of computer systems connected together without the users actually even being aware of it. And that's what allows these massive distributed denial of service attacks. So you have to attack this problem both from a technical standpoint and from a human education behavioral modification standpoint. You got to do everything. And what's worse, I mean, you talk about the Internet of Things. There's a report out that says by 2030 there's going to be something like 50 billion devices connected to the Internet. So as that number continues to increase, so will our vulnerabilities.
Right.
We have to really get out ahead of this thing.
Well, you might say so, sir, but I have to point out, Mr. Siciliano, there are gigantic international companies, corporations, who are very upfront in terms of updating their products, presenting to the consumers the latest version, and of course have a great market success. And yet, trying to hide away from public eyes about how they've been working on their own security issues or security issues related to their latest products. Who are the gatekeepers? Are governments really watching the business community to fulfill their responsibilities in this regard? Who is, on behalf of the consumers, really calling for these changes? Can consumers judge whether changes have already happened or not without the support of the government, without the support of some of the most important members of the business community? These are all very important questions. And Mr. Siciliano, I understand you're coming from the business community, but you cannot hide away from all of these very important questions.
Yes, agreed. You know, consumers as a line of defense are without a doubt the weakest link in the chain. And it is ultimately the onus of responsibility is on the corporation to tighten systems up to make sure that this doesn't happen going forward. But it will. These vulnerabilities, these exploits are all relatively new in regards to the size and scope. We've been experiencing DDoS attacks for quite some time. But using IoT, Internet of Things devices, that in and of itself, again, due to the scale, is relatively new. And what you'll see, you know, like all issues we face in security, of course there's no such thing as 100% security. Only hindsight generally plays a significant role in this. And that is generally when government gets involved. They see what issues had taken place. Numerous politicians take up the issue as a part of their platform, and they bring the corporation to task. And then the corporations, often in response, are either fined or they determine a way to profit from these issues. And through you know, government pressure and a capitalistic system, they usually find some form of a solution. All is not lost. They will find a happy medium.
All right. But the question is, Mr. McDuffie, if I could push a little bit more, we need answer now on a larger scale in many aspects. Who are pushing for these answers at this moment? When corporations are still do not want to come right out there and answer these questions, is there going to be a culture from now on, with this incident and many others, that when they put out a new product, they answer what's the new devices, what are the new applications. They also answer the question, what are the new measures you do with your securities for the consumers? Of course, without revealing the real essence of it to those who want to attack, by the way. But is this going to be a culture, or this is still going to be something that they want to hide away with, whether it's government or whether it's business community? Mr. McDuffie.
So at the foundation of that question that you asked is our understanding of the nature of security itself. It's really a fundamental research question of what does it mean for a piece of software to be secure? Is it possible for you to determine ahead of time that that piece of software is 100% secure or not? And then what happens when you put pieces of software together? Does the combination of software introduce new vulnerabilities and attack vectors that you're not aware of because of the combination? So fundamentally, it's a research issue that academia and scientists have to really struggle with. I think the real motivation behind corporations not wanting to answer those questions is that they don't have good answers for those questions. Nobody has good answers for those questions. Government, at least of all, in the best case, when governments actually try to put regulations in place and they look to the scientific community for answers and then take their advice, that's the best case scenario. But in this case, because of the newness of the field, the pace of evolution and innovation continuing to change, it's impossible to stay on top of it right now. But a lot of smart people are working toward that end.
All right, they probably don't have the utmost answer, but they could have better answer than at least the consumers, and therefore they should give part of the answers. Having said that, though, let me come back to you before we wrap up. Mr. Liu, it's not just the technological issue. It's also international cooperation. The United Nations has been forming this commission, and people have been talking and talking and talking, and yet without any possibility of forming an international agreement on this. So tell me it's a technical issue. Tell me it's about the computer, complicated future. It's not. It's also about human. It's about what we can do and what we are not doing.
Yeah, it's about what we put first when you deal with the cybersecurity issues. Countries are always focused on their own domestic issues, forget about others, forget about the whole system issues. So I think that the government, especially the dominant powers in the world, should do more to push forward the whole global society to build up the international security system.
Well, every time I remember with such a discussion, we always say we need to do more. They really need to do more. And this time we want to say it again. They really, really need to do more. We need some answers. Thank you so much for the three of you gentlemen for helping us at least partly to find the answers. Robert Siciliano, Ernest McDuffie, and Liu Chuanying. Really appreciate gentlemen for being with us. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of a program, visit our website. Just type in World Insight CCTV News into your search engine. You'll be able to find us. Or you can also check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again tomorrow for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.